Shanghai GDG is a very interesting developer community.
I'm glad somebody has asked this question.
This is where the magic happens.
This is primarily a question and answer show. So if any of you out there would like to ask questions.
Hi everybody. Welcome to our most recent edition of the Content API for Shopping Community Office Hours. This week it's more of a fireside chat. As you know, I'm Danny Hermes, Developer Programs Engineer on the shopping team. I have a special guest here with me today, Andrew Lamonica, one of the lead engineers at Zazzle, maybe the lead engineer at Zazzle, and also my newest teammate, Burju Dogan, I believe is how it's pronounced.
Yeah,
and
right.
after,
and I will be replacing Danny shortly.
Yes, yeah. and we'll talk a bit about that at the end after Andrew does his demo. And for the last introduction, I'll let Amanda introduce herself.
So I'm Amanda Surya, and I lead developer relations for our commerce products. And thanks for joining us, and thank you, Andrew, for coming to our office today to talk to us. So I guess we can get started with talking about Zazzle. Do you want to tell us what Zazzle is, Andrew?
So Zazzle.com is a custom products marketplace. We're based here in the Bay Area, and people can take pictures or graphics that they've created and upload them to Zazzle and create mugs or t-shirts or iPhone 5 cases or postage stamps. And then you just buy them and we send them to you. One of the neat features of Zazzle is that it's also a marketplace, so if you have some good content that you want to share with the rest of the world and make royalties on, you can post it for sale, and when somebody buys it, we'll pay you a royalty and handle all the logistics of shipping and manufacturing and customer support. So that's kind of the rundown of Zazzle.
Cool.
I could give a quick
yeah, we'd love to see it.
Overview of the site. You can see here many of the things that you can create. This is actually only a small subset of them, and shirts and stickers and water bottles and all sorts of fun stuff. You can also do searches for content that has been provided by other people. I just did a search for Google Doodles here.
Nice.
Google is one of the companies that actually provides content to Zazzle. We have companies in addition to individuals who upload content, so you can buy some Google Doodles on a t-shirt or a sticker or a mug or something.
I kind of want to buy the Sesame Street Google Doodle.
I know, right?
Idea I could.
I love that.
It's probably on there somewhere.
Yeah.
Actually, this is not a super good example, but some products that are provided are even customizable, so you can add extra text to them. So, like, I think I totally spelled that wrong, but it might still work. No, it did not.
What'd you type in?
I tried to type Mickey Mouse shirt.
Gotcha.
That should be pretty safe.
So how many different types of products that you can print?
Actually, I'm an engineer at Zazzle, so unfortunately I am not up on the latest count, but I would guess about 100.
Oh, wow.
It becomes a much larger number if you count individual SKUs of shirts. Like you can buy smalls or green or the silver version or something like that. So you can also customize products and buy them, so you can put your name on it or something like that.
Cool.
I'm like totally not that familiar with my own website.
That's okay.
All right. So the reason I'm here today is Zazzle actually uses the Google Shopping API. So
yes. So you guys obviously have a pretty sweet website that you're showing, and you have, from what I know in the outside world, a pretty loyal following, and also some other casual users that make your user base pretty big. So, as Andrew said, we invited him here for a reason, right? and it wasn't just to sell Zazzle. We wanted to talk to him about engineering, right? So, Andrew, if you'd like, could you give us maybe a bit about what the history is with you guys sending product data to Google, whether it's through the Content API or for others, and also how your use of the API with all the data you guys have from your large user base, how that gets used, and how this has helped you or hurt you, whatever whatever you want to lay on us. Let's hear it.
So as I mentioned before, Google has a marketplace, and it's a very low bar to entry. So people can just upload a picture. They don't have to pay any money. They don't have to do, too much to just get it up there, which means we consequently have millions and millions and millions of products that, we then want to provide to people to buy. And so we have a lot of channels to get that information out there. And Google Shopping offers us a couple of good channels, one of which is it integrates pretty well with AdWords and with the Google Affiliate Network, which is display advertising. And it also powers the Google Shopping sites in the various countries. I forgot to mention earlier that Zazzle is in 17 countries.
Wow.
So we have lots of content in lots of different languages.
I've never been to 17 countries.
Me either.
Someday, Danny.
Someday.
So when we first started out with Google Shopping, we didn't contact Google or anything. We just signed up and we just started uploading feeds, gzipped XML files with the maximum number of products, which I think is it's changed over the years. But
I think 20 megs is the max now.
Yeah, there's
it's not
some
about the number of products.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Anyhow.
So we started with that, and that worked for some. You can actually do this. That worked for some applications. It was kind of limited, though, in several ways. And one of the things early on that was kind of a problem was we had lots of different accounts because we had different stores in different countries. And that was fixed when Google contacted us, or we contacted them, or something about multi-client accounts. So, which is what we're doing now, and we basically have one of those for each country, not one multi-client account, but one sub-account.
Right.
Which is really helpful because, as I'll mention later, when debugging, it's nice to have everything in one place. Recently, though, maybe a year and a half ago, we switched to the content for shopping API, which was actually solved a lot of important problems for us over just uploading giant gzipped XML files. Probably the biggest one was that our content was sort of perpetually out of date.
Right.
We were doing one big upload of every file every day, and that meant that the minimum turnaround time, there could be the maximum turnaround time would be 24 hours.
Right.
So you could upload a product and then something about that product changed and Google wouldn't know about it for some time after that.
And as a marketplace, you had a lot of price changes. I'm sure, right?
Yeah. So another thing I didn't mention about Zazzle is that when you post a product for sale, you get to set the price, and you're even offered the opportunity to change that price along with just about everything else about the product except for the physical picture itself. So you can change the keywords or the title or the description, and all of that content needed to be given to Google as soon as possible, especially the price, because when a price changes, it's against Google's terms of use if you're showing the wrong price for a product on your website or showing a different price from what you upload in the feeds.
And you'd probably rather not have that anyway, right?
No, it's also a bad experience for the customer who, they think they're paying, they click on a link that says $25 and it's $22 and they're scratching their heads.
They don't know who to be mad at.
Yeah, and they don't know, did this product change? Am I not in the right place? I wanted the one that was, $25. So, so Content for Shopping solved that problem immediately. That, overnight, when we started uploading changes, to the products as they came in, you no longer had the price problem.
Do you find a lot of the updates you're sending fall into the Express pipeline where you're only changing availability, price, and things like that to where they'll make it into the index faster?
So actually, yes. I don't have the numbers on that, but a lot of the changes that we really care about are the high availability ones.
Right.
Another feature of Zazzle is, since we're a marketplace, we don't actually look at every product that everybody uploads all the time. And so sometimes after a day or so, someone will notice their product is, a copyright violation, or for some reason it's bad quality and it needs to be taken down, or it's miscategorized or mislabeled. I think somebody tried to sell an iPhone case as an iPhone once. They just made it look like it was an iPhone that was, and they set the price and everything. It's really complicated. But we need to take those products down, and those we can tell Google about right away as well.
Right.
I'm assuming delete is high availability, but if it's not, we also set it as out of stock. So those two things should take it out of Google quickly. So the other, removal of content, and also the other thing was, it's very nice for a site like Zazzle that deals with a lot of trending content to be able to get things up there quickly. You don't want the "Don't Tase Me Bro" T-shirt to come out 2 weeks after the video, because by then no one will even know what you're talking about. So, so
that makes a whole lot.
Assuming everyone watching does know. I do, but I don't know about everyone on the internet.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I remember. I'm pretty sure there was some video related to somebody being tased.
Right.
And it was funny for about 2 weeks. So,
it's still funny.
So that kind of content needs to be uploaded quickly, and the content for shopping API gives us the opportunity to do that, whereas the big feed files really didn't. Especially because one of the most time-consuming parts of uploading the big feed files was picking what products to upload. Also, another thing that this saved us, I mentioned that it was very time-consuming to pick what products to upload. It was also very hardware-intensive to pull all that data out of our data store in one big batch and then upload it. So the Content for Shopping API lets us do only a subset. And I actually, before I came here today, looked at the numbers, and I believe that even though we're getting faster turnaround time and changing up our feed more frequently, we are sending 1/10 as much data as we would with the big feed files.
Pretty awesome.
So we got a lot of advantages, and we saved resources on probably both sides of that transaction.
Right. Network resources, if nothing else, right?
Yeah.
Even if you don't think about hardware.
I mean, it's actually one drawback that I've not encountered recently, but that I encountered early on, is that it actually does take more bandwidth to send Content for Shopping API requests than it does to send a giant gzipped file. But it's not it's so much less data that you end up saving in the long run.
So you're talking like in total length of the connection, or in something else?
Just in bytes.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because
the payloads are big because of the spec and things like that.
There's extra metadata, and there's also I suspect there is a way to fix this, but I haven't found a good way to upload gzipped content. So even though I'm doing batch requests,
it took me a really long time to get it working. It's some header iteration that you kind of have to get perfect. But if you get the headers right, it's actually not too bad. We can maybe start a post on the forum, and it's your question, and I'll post an answer with the headers. Somebody actually asked something about this a few months ago, and we
I saw that, and I tried to reproduce his solution, and
so maybe we'll do a deeper dive into it.
That would be good. Great, that's
cool.
I'm not sure that the bandwidth expense is the biggest thing right now,
right.
But it's definitely
certainly.
Definitely nice to be able to contract those.
Sure.
And I assume you can send larger batches if they're gzipped as well, right?
Yep. 1 meg is a hard cap, no matter what's in the payload. It's not like unzipped 1 meg or anything like that.
Cool.
For those who aren't familiar, batch requests are limited. You can put as many products as you want, so long as the payload doesn't exceed 1 megabyte in size, right? Anyhow, sorry to interrupt. So I kind of briefly mentioned the
one drawback. There's
Feel free, lay into it.
Yeah, there's a couple
That's
other.
all right. Let's hear it.
There's a couple other small drawbacks that I put in my notes here.
Go ahead.
Actually, these are mostly related to complexity.
Right.
Sure.
The Content for Shopping API is a more complex system and will require, a little bit more concentration from the developers than just creating a giant file and FTPing it.
Sure.
The things on my list include authentication, which is certainly more complicated. We are still using client auth, and I understand that is going away.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So we're going to have to make that transition to OAuth soon.
Yes.
But even client auth, if you don't use a library from Google, can be some extra work.
Sure. Parsing the initial response back and getting the correct token and things like that.
That's right. Another thing is that it's not ideal for massive changes. I think this was mentioned on the forum, maybe a couple times, people saying, I want to change every product in my feed, all 100,000, 200,000, 500,000, and it's going, I'm getting timeouts or slowdown or errors, and that's a problem that we have had very rarely because we've optimized kind of the selection process to minimize the number of changes made. But if we ever had a big change like discontinuing a product or changing the prices on everything or something like that, I could see where that might take several days to actually upload rather than the file.
I did the math once and it came out to like 4 hours on like
Really?
1 million products, but.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's
So,
pretty good.
but 6 million we just made it to a day. So maybe I should redo the math.
Yeah, I'm not. It might just be my programming ability. I haven't haven't quite made it. I'm multi-threading, but maybe there's some more I could do there to get the requests in there faster. Yeah. Although it is nice to just not have to worry about it to a certain extent. Once you have the system in place to update products as they change. People can make business decisions to change products all the time, and it will, and those changes will trickle into Google. So I'm not sure that I would even do a big file upload if I had a massive amount of changes to do. I might just let things be out of date for however many hours it took to get it there. The biggest technical challenge, or it wasn't really a technical challenge, but the biggest complexity in this system over the file uploads has got to be the 30-day time limit.
So I'll let you explain this, but this is true for both.
It is true, yeah. So it's actually there in both cases. Any product that is not updated within 30 days is ejected from Google's shopping.
Expired.
Expired, yeah. So with feed files, it's very easy to think about this because if you upload a feed file every 30 days or less than every 30 days, then you know that every product will, be safe. In fact, you can kind of, although I'm sure that there's a little bit of variance here, you can kind of just assume that whenever you uploaded the file, every product will expire 30 days from that time.
Unless you explicitly set an expiration.
Yeah, unless that's true. You can set a shorter expiration date. With the Content for Shopping API, you don't want to upload every product every day because that would sort of defeat the purpose.
And waste resources.
Yes. So you need to keep track of when you have updated which products. So at least that's the way we solve that problem. Whenever a product is updated for whatever reason, either because it was selected to be a product given to Google or because it was removed or because it's a brand new product or something like that, or something changed about it like the price, we upload that product to Google and we keep track of the timestamp of when we uploaded it. We also, and I believe right now we're using 25 days just to be safe. Any product that has not been uploaded in the last 25 days is uploaded again. So we have this constant running, and that's why it's 10%. It would probably be a lot smaller if it weren't for the products being refreshed periodically. I understand the need for the refresh, but that's certainly something that you have to think about when you decide to do feeds versus or do content for shopping API versus feeds.
Sure. Cool.
So, yeah.
Could you please give us a little bit more detail about your existing infrastructure?
Sure. So right now what we do is we already have an existing infrastructure on Zazzle to notify various interested modules about changes to products. So I hooked into that infrastructure, and it's not like in line with the website, but it's just a little bit offline from the website. So when a product changes or is deleted or something like that happens, this module is notified of that change, and I batch up those changes into Google API batch requests and send them across, and then I get some feedback on those, and I actually do track the feedback both in log files, and I also think I keep one result for each product, which helps me know when there are products that are being rejected for some reason or something else. I can decide what to do with those later. I can either remove them, or I can fix them, or I can notify content review that this is a bad product or something like that.
So what you're saying is, for the developers out there who aren't doing it, you should be logging at least the most recent response from the API, so you can go back in and play doctor and figure out what went wrong, why that product got sick. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
You can
Pro
also
tip. Pro tip from
Yeah,
Andrew.
You can
definitely.
use-
Pro tip from a pro,
Right.
in my opinion. A pro.
You can do what probably most people do, because Google has such great tools online to see your requests and to see what has failed. You can use that as a double check, but
Sure.
it's probably good especially if you have a very large catalog, more products than can be uploaded to Google under your agreement. It's a good idea to check to see what's happening with those products, because it's certainly not worthwhile to send the same product that's going to fail again and again and again.
Right.
You want to take that out, or take that whole class of products out.
Sure.
And this is probably going to become even more important with the AdWords transition, because the AdWords rules are much more strict about what you can and cannot include. At least from what I've noticed, we have a higher percentage of
Disapprovals?
disapprovals in AdWords than we ever had with just content for shopping. So
good to know.
Yeah, and slowly we will work through those and say, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't say this word. This I know originally I had some people who were putting all capital titles in there and other things like that.
What's the rule in AdWords about exclamation points? You only get one?
Oh,
Isn't there
you only
something
get
like
one
this?
exclamation point?
Somebody on the AdWords DevRel team was telling me about this a couple weeks ago.
That's a good thing to know. I'll
Yeah.
probably have to deal with that one too.
Yeah.
Some people are very excited about their T-shirts.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. So the API dashboard, which I guess you're going to show that.
Yeah, we'll be talking about it in a sec.
Is really good for finding systemic problems.
That's the word I was thinking of. Maybe I just psychically put it in your head.
Maybe. And I have used that. I have actually encountered problems before where I just looked at the dashboard and I knew there was something wrong. I had a problem a few months ago where we were sending too many requests. I was confident that the number that was being sent every day was higher than it should be, and it turned out that there was a problem with the way we were deleting products. Where we were deleting them, but we weren't remembering that we deleted them. So we tried to delete it again, and we tried to delete it again, and we ended up with a
bunch of 400s.
Yeah, basically Google would send back the response saying, content or product not found. And I saw that right in the thing. There was that number was also going up, and that seemed kind of like a very good clue to what was going on.
Awesome.
So
Awesome use case.
Do you 100% use the content API for shopping now, or do you sometimes still go back to the feeds?
So we haven't uploaded significant feed files since we switched over to the content for API. I do occasionally upload a feed file to check things. I have some test products that I upload. There's some sort of undocumented components, like what happens to text tags that aren't in the official spec.
Sure.
You know, and I want to make sure that those are doing what I think they're doing. There's also like Google Affiliate Network has a lot of custom tags,
Right.
and it's nice to be able to in addition to sending those content for shopping, but it's nice to be able to upload some test products offline,
Sure.
not through the main system, and then ask them, you know, did you get the products?
Sure.
And so whenever anything
So mainly
changes
for
there,
testing.
yeah, I haven't used it for for sending day-to-day products, and
So-
there's a good reason for that. The expiration model on those is kind of confusing because when you upload a file with a lot of products, it appears, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong on this, it appears that Google still sort of treats that as individual update requests over a period of time after you've uploaded the file. So maybe it's an hour, maybe it's just 10 minutes, maybe it's 5 minutes, but during that time, if you do some other update request in the Content for Shopping API, you could totally lose that.
Sure.
Right.
So you
Race conditions.
Yeah, basically it's a race condition. That's a programmer's term for basically two things happening at once.
Yes.
So when those two things happen at once, the outcome is unclear, and it's better to not send the same. If you are going to separate it, you need to send different products so you're sure that they don't overlap and don't enter into any of these race conditions. So
Cool.
you were going to ask another question.
I was?
Yeah, but I kind of waylaid you there.
All right.
It was exactly.
No. Well, I was gonna comment. You were saying sometimes you use feeds to test stuff out. The interactive demo can also be a great tool to
Yes.
test stuff out. If you're sending individual products or relatively small payloads that you can sort of type by hand. But you know, if you'd rather use
I actually have done that, and I actually do both, because sending the syntax is subtly different between the feeds and the Content for Shopping API. There are some different namespaces and a couple of things like that. So I also use the really great structured content API demo page to test things, especially when I run into some problem that is a mystery to me, like a single request failing for reasons unknown.
Right.
I'll put that in there, or I'll type it from hand, and then what I'll do is I'll just remove stuff until it works, and then I know what
binary
what
search
failed.
for
Yeah,
dummies, right?
basically, yeah. That's a terrible way to debug, but
Sure.
but
Sometimes
it's
you
very
have to.
effective on obscure bugs.
Sure.
So
Cool.
yeah, I would recommend everybody try that page. It's a little bit weird with the multi-client accounts. You have to be careful about the ID number, because as soon as you log in, it resets the ID number back to the main account, which is inevitably
The idea of the authenticated user.
Yeah, So that is never the account that you want to upload products to.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
And you're not allowed to anyway, right?
yeah, so that's caught me a few times. I submit, and it's like access denied or something.
Sure.
And I'm like, I don't understand what's going on here. But then I realized that it just changed the number. You have to until you guys get an opportunity to fix this. You should probably log in and then type the number in.
Yep.
So.
And for those who are unfamiliar with the debug tool he was talking about, or the demo tool he's talking about right now, I'm going to be posting a link in the actual description on YouTube. So just wait until this video actually ends up, in final publish mode, and it'll be there. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before I start the demo?
No.
Okay. So I've got a very short demo for everyone. Andrew was talking about the debug tool, a tool which is nice for systemic errors. And for the typical user who doesn't have an MCA, this change doesn't affect you. But for people who are managing lots of accounts, this is a change which can be pretty helpful. So I've got my sub account here. I'm logged in as an owner of the MCA. So you see here's the parent MCA. Actually, let me zoom a bit. So you see here is the parent MCA name, and then my sub account name, Dan Goog. I'm Dan, I work for Goog, right? So I click the API dashboard tab, and I go see my API dashboard. I have Flash disabled by default, so let me enable that. And you see here, by default, my dashboard tells me I have 21 errors, and that actually is conditional on a setting that these are requests that I have made. But if we were to go to the user setting, we would see that other than the owner of the MCA, there's also some owners or users affiliated just with this sub-account who could also make requests. So prior to this, I wouldn't have actually been able to see these requests at all. These are erroneous requests I've made as the parent account on behalf of the child account. And before this feature launched, I could only see those requests within the dashboard of the parent account. But now I can see them on the dashboard for the child account. But what's more, I can also say all requests targeting this account. So instead of just the requests that I've made, I can also see other erroneous requests. So when I load up this map, these are all from earlier today. Sorry, I didn't have time to get the data in. The feature just launched today. But we see this number. Let me zoom even more if I can. Nope, I'm at max zoom. For those who can't see, if it's not a good enough zoom on the picture, there are now 41 errors instead of the 21. So me and one of my teammates, actually our technical writer for our team, we did a bit of demo with some errors to actually preload this dashboard. And so she actually made 20 more errors. And so we actually see, if we want to see all errors affecting this account, we can see the ones I made, but we can also see the ones everyone made. So that's the feature that launched, and I'm happy to announce it. We'll be sure to update some of the documentation in the Merchant Center and maybe even have a blog post for those who are interested in having this in written form. So before we go to the moderator queue, I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but Amanda's going to read it to us. I'd like to outline some changes around this team and this particular bi-weekly hangout. So as you may have heard from Burju, or if some of you are just general Google Developers Live fans, you may have noticed that I've been doing a lot of App Engine hangouts with the App Engine team, and I also did one with the YouTube team on behalf of App Engine. And I'm going to be moving full-time over to App Engine, and Burju is going to be taking my place full-time. And she's going to be working closer with the ads folks than I was, which is obviously going to benefit everyone. But she's also going to be physically closer to the API engineering team, which I think is also going to be a huge benefit to everyone. So I'm sad to go, but I'm excited for new things. And before we jump on the moderator, I'll give Burju a chance to talk a bit about herself and tell you guys.
This is actually my second week at Google.
Okay.
Yeah.
Third.
And third. I've been working as a software engineer for 6 years, and I have worked on very diverse fields, from telecoms to mobile, from maps to gamification, and this is going to be a great challenge for me as well. So I'm very glad to be here. I hope that the developer community will grow. Because there are a lot of things coming interesting, and I'm taking Danny's place, but
so I think
what
she's
would
probably
you
more
like
than
to
capable. I think
what
you'll
would
see
you
over
like
the
to
next
add,
few
Danny?
months that she will probably embarrass me as an engineer. She's phenomenal. And, you guys are being left in great hands.
Thank you, Danny.
Sure thing.
You've been a great mentor.
With the team changes, we might also change the structure of this show, and that's still being worked out. So
yes,
stay tuned for updates.
So usually we announce the next one. We're not sure when the next one will be. We'll certainly still do them, but every 2 weeks the frequency may change.
Yeah.
And I guess with that, I'll let Amanda go to the moderator. So
all right.
What are we looking at?
So we have a couple of questions.
Okay.
First question. If products are submitted via the Content API, are the same requirements for showing tax and shipping enforced as with feeds?
Sure. Good question. Andrew wants to answer, but I'll answer this one. So you can think of feeds files and the Content API as sort of doors to the same house. The data ends up in the same place, and as a result has the same requirements. So if you're not going to include tax and shipping, either with feeds files or the API, it has to be an account level setting. And it's just, that's always the same. So the spec is not any different for what actually needs to be in your data. Like I said, doors to the same house. Once it gets in, it goes through the same sort of validation. Though the synchronicity of this validation is very different, and in cases like the Express pipeline for the Content API, which allows changes to make it in a Google search index in a matter of minutes rather than a matter of hours, the Content API is clearly superior. What's the next question?
All right, so this is more for Zazzle.
Awesome, awesome.
So this person, frustrated but hopeful, that's his username.
Okay.
He's curious about how Zazzle use the API, especially around filtering, junk content or queries. How do you make sure that, because you are also a marketplace, right?
Yeah.
So how do you make sure that the content that you're uploading, the products that you're uploading, to Google, it's
So
following the terms and service,
yeah. So this is actually probably one of the most complicated parts of the feed program that we employ, especially because Google is not the only place that we send product data to, and everybody has slightly different rules. There's some kind of basic rules that are built into Zazzle already that we follow. For example, Zazzle users are allowed to give their product a maturity rating, and we use that to make sure that we don't send adults-only products or something like that to Google. We also have our own content review team that works on, making sure that copyright things are followed.
They're doing by hand, or
they have. That's like a whole workflow by themselves. They have scripts and they do it by hand, and they have some automated suggestions and things like that. But that's I hooked into that system as well to make sure that I'm not sending anything that we think is not good. But then I also just have some rules. Google frowns on all capital titles, so I just remove
also
that.
frown.
Yes, yes. I also frown on those. I have not used the new API for finding data quality issues, but I've used the website sort of informally to go on there and look and see what's been rejected programmatically, and then I just apply those rules to my selection process. I believe I mentioned earlier that one of the most time and resource consuming parts is selecting the products. One of the reasons is because we need to check those products for potential problems, like all capital titles, or bad words, or too short, like the title could be too short, or the description could be too long, or it could have some kind of weird XML in it that maybe Google doesn't want to display on their site. So it's a pretty manually implemented process, and it's different for every feed consumer.
And how about on the Google side, Danny? Any
As for
insight in terms of our filtering?
data quality, and validation.
Signals, and
so what in particular are you hoping I'll share? So we
Please
talk.
give us a
we
list
talk,
of words that we cannot use.
Yeah,
not that.
as far as things like that. So I guess we have some tools in place.
Yeah.
So the great thing, I say this a lot. I kind of feel like a broken record, but the great thing about the API is that we have two stages of validation for the data. One is the initial stage to make it sort of into the house, but then from there you have to make it actually further into the house. So the first stage of validation is like the payload you send is valid XML, or all the required attributes are sent, things like this. But there are more complex things that happen after the fact. So we have two stages. The first stage, we'll just say immediate rejection. You didn't send a required element. You didn't provide a title that was long enough. You didn't actually send XML, right? Or something that our parsers understand as XML, right? But then there's the second stage, which we'll check for other things like bad words or certain things that maybe we don't want to display, or websites that don't actually work. For your case, since you guys are hosting all content, is this the case? So like when you're checking quality of data for your users, they upload content,
Yes.
but after they've uploaded,
Right.
you host it,
Yeah,
right?
with our own
so you don't
CDN
have
and
this same
everything,
sort of issue. You're not going to check against yourself for for the
That's
quality
true.
of a web page. But these are issues that we deal with, and whether it's the API or not, either way we're dealing with this. Is that what you were hoping I would say?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
Well, that's pretty much it in terms of the question and the moderator.
Cool. So I think we'll wrap up. Amanda,
Yeah.
I think maybe you had a public service announcement that you wanted to make.
Yes, our team is hiring, so if you're interested,
So is ours.
No, seriously.
If you're interested in joining, our team, you can check out our job openings at developers.google.com/jobs.
Okay, what about Zazzle's job?
I bet it's /jobs, but I'm going to be kind of dumb.
Let
if
me
it's,
see. I'll race you.
Yep. Well, that is a really ugly page, but
Whatever, it'll work.
Zazzle.com/jobs.
There we go.
All
Cool.
right.
So,
Well, thank you so much, Andrew.
Yes.
For joining us.
it was great to have you.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
And we'll miss you, Danny.
He's not going far.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye bye.